the SIG Tango6 3-18. Yes, I got my hands on another SIG. This one was actually oddly sold to me by a guy that reached out on a forum and said, hey, I got this, you want it? And I was like, sure. The price was right. I've been wanting to get my hands on a lot more SIG products because I really like their products and I love their boxes. I mean, they're just, again, they're just top notch. What do we got to work with? Well, here's everything you're going to need to know. It's got a ton of really cool features, made in Japan, and comes in at a fairly acceptable price. That price just so happens to put this in shooting range of probably its biggest competitor, which is going to be the Razor HD Gen 2 3-18. But we'll touch on that very soon. So let's take a look and see what's inside the box. Yes, this box might have seen a lot of love, but inside is what matters. And it's so far, again, SIG always impresses me with just how well they package their stuff. It's very smart, neat, and efficient. What do we got here? So this looks like, yep, a gigantic sunshade, which I might as well leave that out. Screw it. And let's take a look at the scope itself. Fitted foam everywhere. Look at that. Look at that little cradle it's in. Piece of foam on top. Ah, it's excellent. This thing ain't going nowhere, and you know it. Let's get all the booklets out. Take off the bikini cap. Let's put that down for a second, and let's take a look through the owner manual. So I'm not going to go too crazy with this because I shouldn't need to. There is your adjustment for the zero stop and everything. And that's about it. All right. And this is just a little brochure for your custom ballistic turrets, which I don't know what I'd really use these. Actually, you know what? I know exactly what I'd use this for. It'd be for my Whiskey 5 on my 22 LR. So first things first, I got to email the guy that I bought this from because this sunshade clearly does not fit this scope. With that out of the way, let's take a look at the scope itself. Now, you're going to note this thing has been pre-loved and unfortunately saw a bit of an issue right there with a ring. I guess it loosened up and it's got pushed forward, and maybe under recoil that happened, or the ring was obviously pressed all the way back here. You could see the witness marks, and it just took a little bit with it. Might have been scratched. Maybe he had it in the mount and he went to go turn it and it caused that. It's very superficial though, so I don't think it's the end of the world. But if I ever send this into SIG, I wonder if that would get fixed. Highly doubt it. Shouldn't have to send this in, even though there's a couple things that I'm a little curious about, but that's because this thing has seen its fair share of use. This guy used to use this in competition all the time, and when it came to me, it was a little dirty. I cleaned it up best I could, but this thing is battle tested. I'll just leave it at that. Assembled in Japan, designed by SIG in Oregon. Beautiful. And I'm gonna set that. All right. So now we got that out of the way. Let's start at the fast focus eyepiece, which is nice and hard to turn. I'm not a big fan of fast focus eyepieces because this should be set to your eye and never touched again. If someone's going to be using your gun, then they have to suck it up for a little bit. Anyway, ooh, little grit in there, probably from the sand and dust that he would be shooting out of the southwest. But other than that, this feels really, really good. There's a lot of tension on the inside and requires a fair amount of twisting force to move this. So let's get all the way out, in a little bit. Very little to no wiggle, I would say. In fact, yeah, I'd say there's no wiggle to this whatsoever, which is perfect. Because God forbid you drop this, you hit this with something. The looser this is, the more likelihood it is to cause damage on the inside. This is nice and tight, and I, so far, love it. Now, one thing I am a little peeved about, but maybe I'll email SIG and see what they say as far as a warranty claim. The fiber optic tubes that are usually mounted on the back. Again, this scope was very well used, so, shit happens. Anyway, just like we saw on the Tango 4, this thing has very aggressive knurling on it, and it feels absolutely fantastic. You get a little bit of a bump over here. I wonder if SIG sells a little throw lever that you can attach to either this or these two little set screws in the middle. That would be really cool, but if not, you have really good purchase on this. Not only that, it's aided in the fact that this thing is buttery smooth with a fair amount of resistance, not so much that you're going to need a throw lever. This you could really adjust fairly quickly. 3s at 12, 18s at 6, so this is 180 degrees minimum to maximum magnification, and it feels absolutely fantastic. Hard stops either end. It's like you're riding on ball bearings. This feels fantastic. One feature about this scope that I'm very curious to check out is the Anti-Cant system. So what this should do is let you know when the scope is slightly off. Idea behind this is if you're taking a long shot, you want everything to be level as possible, or at least the scope as level as possible. So I'll be very curious to see how well this works. Illumination is handled with this gigantic knob on the side. We only have a couple of adjustments with no offs in between. You only have the one off, high and low. And again, I'm sure this is because this is a very used scope, but there isn't that much of a detent there. Resistance on this is pretty good, but once you click it into place, it's barely enough to keep it there. Not the end of the world. One thing I do like about this being a lower magnification scope, it goes from 25 to 100, 100 to 300, 300 to infinity. What this means is you're not going to have to play around with this if you're going for really long shots. You're going to get it from 300, 400, 500, 600, and 1,000 and just leave it there, and everything should be in perfect focus. Now, there is a downside to this, whereas if you're like me and you use this adjustment for getting an idea of your range, if you're shooting beyond 300 yards, it's going to be difficult to get this as your ballpark figure. However, if you are shooting long range, you're just going to basically set it and forget it and just pay attention to shooting, which can be a nice feature. So a bit of a double-edged sword there. You know, stupid me, I filmed the unboxing last night, and as you can see, I got this already mounted up in an ADM recon mount. I completely forgot to talk about the actual battery compartment. So real quick, we're going to unscrew this, which, by the way, the knurling on all of these caps is identical, and it is fantastic. SIG knows how to do knurling better than any other scope manufacturer right now. A couple threads, not that many. There you can see the knurling is pretty aggressive. Very short threads on this. It's actually a pain in the butt to put this back on. And there is your battery. Standard CR2032, and it is not going anywhere. I have a 6-inch Starrett scale, which might be thin enough to get in there. Yep. And pop it up. So this is how you do a battery compartment. Kalas, this is how you do it. Yeah, so fantastic. Really secure. The only thing that sucks is be careful when you put this cap back on. You really got to get that lead thread right. If not, it will feel like it's starting to cross thread. So just be very patient with this. Yeah, see, even that is not good. All right, so I'm going to finish this up. There we go. Excellent. All right, I feel better now. Back to the regular review. Moving on to the elevation and windage knobs. These are locking, both of them. Very similar to what we would see on a Razor HD, except these have a lot more throw on them. As you can see, they're moving up, I'd say about 5/16 of an inch, maybe almost 3/8 of an inch. Now, paying attention to the elevation knob on this, you're going to see there's going to be our 0, and then all the little data marks letting us know where we're going. This feels better than I think it sounds. It doesn't sound too enthusiastic as far as a turret goes, especially a precision turret. But you could feel it through your fingers, and when it locks, it's not terribly sharp inside that detent. As you can see, there is a fair amount of play. Again, this thing has been used a lot, so when we check out the windage knob, maybe it'll be a little bit better. But one thing I don't like is that SIG, for whatever reason, didn't bring these lines all the way down to the bottom of the cap. So if you're doing this in a hurry, you really have to make sure you're lined up properly. Like right there, where are you? Is that 2.4 or 2.5? Another thing is, if I go to lock this right now, it doesn't fully lock because it is slightly in between. So let's go 2.5-ish. And as you can see, you wiggle around and it locks in place. Let's try that again. Let's go back to 0 or 0-ish. It's not locking. Press and turn a little bit, or turn and press a little bit, and there you have it. Not really a deal breaker, but it's a little bit annoying. Moving on to our windage knob, at least we do have a knob that goes 1 and 1 off of 0, so left and right appropriately. And let's see how this sounds. It sounds a little bit tighter than the elevation knob, but it's still not that impressive. A little bit soft on the touch, and again, once it's locked in there, there is a little bit of play side to side, as you can see. But let's see if this will lock. Yep, that one at least locks better. Let's try that again. Let's just go anywhere and lock. All right, so at least this is good. The elevation knob has just probably been used significantly more than the windage, which is typical of any scope, so I'll give that a pass for right now. All right, let's see if the cap will come off. It does. There is nothing of excitement or importance under the cap, but let's take a look at everything else. So this should pop up. There we go. We've got some locks on the outside. That's funny. It sounds and feels a lot better with the cap off. I think because this gigantic O-ring that's over here might need to be lubed up, but that feels really good. Let's crack this open and see what we got underneath it. Pull this off. So we got another finite knurled section right there, as you can see. You can see the very, very finite splines all the way there at the bottom. And this is going to be our 0 stop. So we'll loosen up these set screws and we would adjust it, put it all back together, and we're golden. All right, so the cap is fully back on. A little bit better, I would say. Let's see if this locks up better. Nope, we still got to twist it in line and then press it down.
Let's take a look through this, shall we? The first thing you're going to notice is the shadow at the top part of the image looking through the scope. It does, however, disappear when you go into slightly higher magnification. If you were behind this without having a rigid camera like how I have, it wouldn't be as noticeable, but it's only at the lower magnification range. Illumination is currently on full, and as you can see, this is a very bright sunny day, and being able to see the illumination as clear as we can here is honestly one of the best performances out of one of these mid-magnification scopes that I've ever gotten my hands on. It's extremely impressive. The Mri Reticle that SIG put on this thing, I actually kind of like. It's simple without being too simple. I really like the fine center dot, and I kind of like how large they made the indications between 1 mil is. It's easy to pick up, easy to read, and it generally doesn't take up too much space. I want to briefly touch on the Anti-Cant system, which is activated by a push on the side of the illumination knob like we saw earlier. You push it once, it lights up both indications on either side at 3 and 9 o'clock, and then it lights up which side you have to come up on. It goes off after 2 minutes of inactivity, so you don't have to worry about it killing your battery. Image quality here at about 30 yards seems pretty good. Maybe a little bit soft at the maximum magnification, but overall not terrible. Pushing back to about 400 yards, focusing on the steel door, I have to say I really like this parallax knob. I like how easy and simple it is to get everything in focus. That tree line's probably about 100 to 150 yards closer than that door is, and everything still remains fairly focused, or at least in focus enough that you can clearly see it. You can, however, also see that the edge does get a little bit soft. The overall image isn't terrible, but I was expecting a little bit more at its maximum magnification. So far, the scope is shaping up to be really nice. It's got some really interesting features that if they work well enough, I think will be a huge hit. For its price, around $1,500 or so, I really do think it has an uphill battle ahead of it. The Razer HD Gen 2 3-18, basically the scope's main competitor, comes in at around the same price, and that's one of the best scopes I've ever gotten my hands on. So time will tell to see if this thing can hold up to it. Anyway, that's all for this unboxing. Thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for the full review coming soon. And a very huge thank you to all of my Patreon providers. Without you, this wouldn't be possible. If you'd like to help support the channel but don't want to join my Patreon, I completely understand. but you can still help support by using my affiliate links in the description below. Thanks again for watching.